This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and my guests, my co-hosts, are here with me today. That being Devin Booth over there, and Amir Assad. Is that the right? Did I get that right? No, Amir over there. Devin Booth.
I'm right next to you, right there.
Actually, it's even worse than that. Devin's below me, and Amir's over there. Anyway, welcome to 3 Wide, our podcast-style conversation about sim racing that we do on the second Saturday of each month. So today being the second Saturday of May, we are here to talk about some of the topics. Obviously I do the pit stop in the morning and talk about a variety of things in sim racing that are going across our world. And throughout the month, a few topics kind of come to the top as things that have been really sometimes sensitive issues. Sometimes, like last month, we talked about the COVID, and we talked about the impact on certain drivers. So each month, I think we'll find a few topics that are good conversation points. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Dave. Hey, Ola. Just welcome everybody to the show, including welcoming Devin and Amir. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good, man. Doing real good. Amir, how are you doing?
In all at once moment.
I'm doing good. Oh man, no, I'm doing really good. Just a little tired from last night's NASCAR race. But yeah, other than that, I'm doing really good, man.
So I nonchalantly take that race on, and I there I am racing before dinner time for me. It's nice and mellow, cool. I'm done right in time to go eat. What time do you do that race, Amir?
So for me, the race starts at 1 a.m. Yeah, right after the pit. So doesn't usually ends around 3:30.
And how old are you? Ish.
38. I'll be all right. At least it's a week, and that way I can stay up. At least that way I can sleep in, so it's not too bad. But then most of my Saturday's already gone. But
I don't have that stamina anymore. I just.
That's how much I love racing with you guys.
I hear you. That might change. And you know what? When we have an endurance race, I'll do the 3 a.m. shift. I'll just pay for it for a week.
I'm good. I'll hold you to that, man.
And Devin, what about you? What are you up to, man? How are you doing?
I'm a DD boy. I'm trying to be excited, but I got a DD boy. I'm
just
like
super
pumped.
Stop bragging, huh?
I can't. I know.
super braggadocious.
I'm not.
How long did it take you to set it up?
How much? Which now? Sorry.
And how long did it take you to set it up?
Like 6 hours. I had to drill holes, but it works, and it's on a rig that's not made for it. And I got my budget rim, and we're good to go. I'm very happy with everything.
Now, speaking of dedication, we talked about Amir's dedication to sim racing in the middle of the night. Before we get to our topics, but Devin, can I see that wheel a little closer than that, please?
Oh God!
I want to talk about levels of dedication real quick.
Okay. All right.
I wasn't gonna say anything, Sean, until you mentioned it.
I mean, what will we do to sim race is the question, right? Devin, when he said generic wheel,
we'll certainly take controllers and glue them to rims.
Devin, when he said generic, that meant no shifters, no buttons, no nothing. I can't even tell. Was that an Xbox or a PlayStation controller? I can't even tell.
Well, actually, it was a $35 Logitech controller, so bought her on a budget, right?
I don't even know what's better. Was your golf club shifter that you had a while back, or that?
Oh, very funny. So,
find its way to Reddit.
I believe it was this week on Monday. I showed a little outrage. Actually, I believe the name that caused my outrage, or the latest round of it, was actually Drift 21, if I'm not mistaken. Because Drift 21 came out in early access. And by my count, in sim racing alone, I think that is the 100th. We should buzzers, streamers. I think that is the 100th title to come out in early access. I just made that number up, by the way. But I don't even know. I don't have the word, so I'm going to turn to you guys first. My topic to you is this early access. Like, was it? I can't remember. There's another one. They're selling it on Dirt. It might be Dirt. They're selling early access. You get it 3 days early. And this is for a full release, but this is their. Actually, let's go away from that. let's stick with early access, true early access.
Mhm.
Games that are coming out potentially before they're ready. We can talk about the motivation behind a company in doing that. Why would they do such a thing? We could talk about what it could or couldn't do to their reputation, depending on the game and their lineage that might even affect it or play a role in people's faith. We, the consumer, oh, is it good that we get? What do we get for our money in doing such a thing? Are we anyway? Amir,
Yeah,
Amir,
I'm to your side. Yeah, to your side.
over here. What do you? I mean, do you buy early access games, and do you feel privileged? Do you feel taken advantage? What's your take on? And I call it a phenomenon because I can't think of a game that doesn't do it now. That's where I'm really feeling.
To be honest, I mean, I'm over it. I'm sick and tired of it. So I mean, I bought when these early access games kind of started coming out. I bought into it. So when Project Cars was first getting released, they were asking people to donate money, and you get different tiers, you get different levels of privileges that comes along with it. And Matt Studios made all sorts of promises that, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to listen to the community. And I liked Studio Mad back then. I thought they were a good company. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and buy the game and be part of the early access and all that stuff. And when the game came out, it was broken. There was so many issues with it, but they kept on saying, "Hey, we promise we're going to do this. We're going to do this," and they never did. Then after a year later, they're like, "Hey, we're going to start Project Cars 2," and I think a lot of people in that community were really bitter about what they did with it. And then we roll into Project Cars 2, and then ACC was the same thing. Like, they gave us the roadmap of how the game's going to be. While when the early release came out, I thought it was good, but there was still a lot missing, and that's where ACC was the last straw for me when it came to going into early access for games, because I just don't want to sit there and buy a game and to test it. I mean, that's the whole point of what beta testing is for. Is you get into you submit an application, or you just click on a link and you get submitted into their beta access, and you get to play the game and find the bugs and help the developers out that way. So when the game officially comes out, most of the bugs have been ironed out, and the game will work on almost every device or PC that's out there. And now we're getting to the point where early access is just we have to wait months for the game to actually work properly.
So, Devin, before we get to you on that, Amir, I want to go back to ACC in particular.
Yeah.
Two things there. Number one, for me, when I think of Assetto Corsa Competizione, it comes from Kunos. So earlier I set this up and I talked about how does lineage come into play here as well. Well, when I think of a title coming from Kunos, which, Netcar Pro, Assetto Corsa, I'm like, okay, whatever they touch is going to be worth its money at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, diving in on Assetto Corsa at early access, and I think I even said this when it first came out, buy it now and don't even turn it on until they finish it. Just consider this like a get in early price, but don't be upset by the lack of content, because if you guys remember, their rollout was very interesting. A serious lack of content, a serious lack of anything to do with it, building up the sim. But I knew someday that it would be one of the big sims, one that you'd name in the top list of sims. So, but again, the lineage defended what they're asking. I saw somebody in chat said a lot of companies might be taking a piss right now. Like not making the money or whatever. It's a tough times, and it's like, well, the early access helps them fund that future development as well. Does that so with Assetto Corsa again? You sound like you were a little upset on that one in particular. Does that make it better or right?
So for ACC, I don't think I wasn't too upset with it, because you got the game when they did the early access. You can buy it for $20, versus when it came out for official release, you'd get it for the full price. So I wasn't too upset. I'm like, I'll drop $20 on the game. I fully knowing, at least with that one, I fully know where they stood. Hey, when the first early access comes out, you're going to have this much content. As the months roll on, we'll add more and more until we get into the official release. I mean, I'm only mentioning the racing games too. I mean, because even normal games are doing this early access stuff now. So that's where kind of
It's every
that's why
game, right?
yeah,
It's
it's every
across the
game now.
board. And you could, so Devin, before we get deeper into that, Devin, what do you have any initial thoughts on this?
Well, initial thoughts are very much so in the same vein as you guys, but to elaborate, there's the point that early access did, when it first came out, have its place, right? Like we were kind of talking when they first came out with Project Cars and stuff like that. When game title or game companies, manufacturers, devs, whatever you want to call them, when they do things properly and they come out with, instead of a roadmap saying, "Hey guys, this is early access." Early access means beta and at a cheaper price, and eventually you'll have a full game. The benefit of you beta testing is that you got it for a cheaper price and that you get to be involved in the development. But now, like you guys are saying with ACC, companies are using it as an opportunity to get the money train rolling early. They're not being honest and forthright with their development plans and their development cycles. They're being too sticky on what they want to do by coming out with these very specific roadmaps. November 17th, we're doing this. December 18th, we're doing this. Every update, it's this and that. And then you can't, in good conscience, as a dev, and any dev will tell you, we have some in the community, that you cannot make a solid deadline unless you're way overestimating,
Right.
which is fine. But that would be my initial thoughts on it.
So going back in time, I think of a company like Live for Speed. Literally, the company was 3 people. That was it. There was no fourth. It was 3 people. And they actually released a full sim. But if I were to take them time lapse forward, if it's like a real indie developer, does that give you a little more room for them to do that kind of a campaign versus a larger company doing it? I mean, there's some companies that do early access and you think, that company probably doesn't actually need the funding to accomplish the game. They're doing it for other reasons, perhaps, which we could go into why a company might do this also in a moment. But anyway, but yeah, what about indie developers? I mean, this could be the lifeline of existence versus disappearing in order to finish a game. Does that change anything?
We all just downloaded MudRunner, and I think that's a good example of not a necessarily indie, but a smaller developer. And like you're saying, Live for Speed, at the time, a smaller developer, they would have been a good candidate. But as a current title, we all just got MudRunner. We're loving it. We know it has its issues, but they're very blatant about what their issues are and where they stand. And it was a great price, and it's a great title. And they have a history of releasing early access and then finishing their games.
Right. Other than naming, is it any different than Codemasters coming out with F1 whatever and people, I'm not saying, but people might call the game broken, so they're charging $60. This is the full release. We know when we buy it that we're expecting a day 1 patch, a week 1 patch, and then hopefully a few others, and then unfortunately, because it's a Madden type yearly sim, at some point they're going to pull the plug and be looking forward anyway. Is that any different or better other than naming? Is it the same thing, just naming differences?
I think they're a little bit different. It's like, I mean, if we're going to talk about Codemasters, like with their F1 games, I mean, again, like because they release them on a yearly basis. I know that the cars change every single year, so they got to keep on up. They got to either they're not going to do DLCs. Let's be honest. As much as people ask for just like, hey, instead of releasing a new game, just do a DLC and be done with it. They're not going to do that. They're just going to release a brand new game. But like my problem with people like Codemasters, for example, is there's still bugs in the current game, like current F1 2019, that they had back in 2015 that they still haven't bothered to fix. Like netcode. Netcode is still a huge issue in the F1 games, and they'll fix the little glitches, they'll fix the graphics of the cars, but they never touch the big issues that kind of hinder what the F1 game's about. So like, for me, like I've stayed away from the F1 games. I haven't bought into any of those until. For me, I'm vehemently against Codemasters when it comes to that. I hope next time a new studio can take it over and run with it and make a better product what Codemasters can do.
What about you, Devin?
I'm 100% with them with the F1 stuff. You guys know how I feel about those, and that's actually a really good point. Is like these games that come out yearly. You mentioned F1. I think WRC does it. Like and there's just a plethora of games that are like every year, just like the Maddens and the NBAs and stuff, and you get this half-done game that gets all these updates. You're right on point with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing. Like, if it's an indie company, yes. I mean, they're cash strapped, so they use either Kickstarter or early access to get money out of people so they can continue finishing their product. But like, yeah, when it comes to companies like Codemasters or like, they have no excuse. They're a company that has money and stock behind them. There's no reason for them to not be able to come out with a polished game on release instead of
Now, I
having to
think
wait
they
for
don't.
patches.
I think they're pretty good about coming out with their release title at $60 or whatever
Mhm.
the price is for all of their titles across the board. They're not one of those ones who come out 3 months early with a half game.
Mhm.
From what my memory serves. But they come out with a game that maybe isn't ready for prime time when it comes out.
Right.
And then maybe has certain things fixed, and then maybe never really gets fixed to the level that you'd want. Devin, iRacing, how is it any different, really? I mean, you get an update, well, every day now. But historically, you get 2 updates every quarter for all of eternity, 10 years running. And how is that any different? I mean, some would say it's still broken. So are we not in a never-ending early access with iRacing? Is it different? Is it a complete game?
I think iRacing's a good example of how to do it. I know lots of people do argue with their pricing model, but when you have something that you want to support long term, I think that's a good way of looking at it. And even not that I want to see this, because for the most part, I think it's a terrible idea. But if you have a small dedicated developer, similar, in vein to like you're saying with Live for Speed, where you have a small group of guys, if they wanted to do a subscription model and once a year do a large update, and you had something that, for example, let's say ACC, right? Let's say Kunos, instead of doing an early access, was like, okay, we have ACC, we're signing on with Blancpain. So for the first year, you pay $25, you get that Blancpain. Next year, you pay $25, you get that the World Series, right? And then next year, you pay that, you get GT4, and it all compounds and it adds, and they continuously make it better. But instead, obviously, they took a year to get it done, and then after that year they kind of fumbled through it and got some other things fixed and never fixed others, and then they're doing the console update, and we all know how that's going to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so RG says, and there's that commercial, would you pay for half a dog haircut? I don't know if neither of you guys are in my
No.
states. But he says, so like it's cool if you pay to say for your refrigerator without it being, if you bought a fridge and it wasn't completed, is that even close to acceptable? No, right?
No.
I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. Now, with that said, why are they getting away with this? If we're saying there's a negative side of this, I don't think we've declared if it's truly a negative aspect. We just kind of touched upon the topic. But if it was negative in any way, shape, or form, who's responsible? I mean, we give them our money and say, do this to me, right? Hey, Amir, did you buy ACC when it came out?
I bought it. Yeah, when they announced the early access, I bought it.
So you, and I mean, I'm not trying to point finger.
No,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
but you gave them money and said, "I know you have an incomplete game, and I'm going to give you money anyway." And so did I. And Devin, did you or not?
I was gifted it actually, but I bought Drift 21, so I do also buy early accesses.
Okay. So we basically gave the money and gave them permission to do this. I mean, if nobody did it, they wouldn't be trying it. If no one funded a GoFundMe page, that would have fallen off the earth a long time ago. But people do. We, the consumer, are responsible, I think. I mean, we can point a finger at the developer and say, how dare they? But yet, we, the consumer, hand over our credit card. I mean,
No, you're 100% right. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as we continue giving these developers money, they're going to continue rolling with this kind of model from here on out. I think, and this like most gaming studios are starting to do that now because they know if they have a decent reputation, people are going to dump money into them so they can continue making these games. And that's the thing. That's why I bought ACC, because I knew AC, even though I have my issues with it, it was a good game and they're a small developer, so I knew, like, things are going to be a little bit longer to get their stuff straight. And ACC, it was a good game when it came out in early access. It had its issues, and I think for the most part they've fixed most of them. They've continued being committed to fixing that product.
Sure.
Unlike for me, like when it comes to Project Cars, where Studio Mad just they'll develop, and then they just stop without saying anything and not fix the big issues, and then just move on to the next game.
And then just sell the company.
Yeah, it's all.
Phil brought up a great example, Wreckfest. So I believe Wreckfest is a little tiny nothing indie company when we all got in on it, and we got it fairly cheap, and it was a really great independent developer racing title. One of the best I've ever played at that level, to be honest with you. And then they got investment, and they went mainstream with their console release and update, and took what was a pretty damn good indie game that I never complained bang for buck for my money, and changed it to the point that if I had bought it in the new version, I might not have. They changed it enough that the game would have gotten a 10 out of 10 when it was an indie company, because I'm like, man, they went out of their, they went above and beyond. When it was a bigger company going to full consoles and everything else, is when I'm like, wow, this game just became an 8 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. Betrayed by the indie early access campaign. Is that a fair assessment, or am I being too harsh in my criticism there?
It's 100% fair.
Yeah, but to that point though, like Dave Blair brought it up. That's the problem though with Wreckfest. Like I think when they first started, they developed it on PC first, which they have a lot more to work with when it comes to making it more not, I can't say more of a sim. It's not really a sim, but they could add more force feedback. They can add more inputs, and how many inputs it could take in versus where they had to dumb it down for the consoles.
Sure. I mean, to make it really simplistic, it's like, let's say the game had 35 calculations that were simultaneously running to configure your tires, your suspension, and the way it interacted with the track. And then when they went to console, and these numbers are just made up, when they went to console, they're like, oh, you can only have 20 of those parameters now. And they had to think which 15 things, and I don't know, again, I ignore my numbers, that you can't really do anymore. And with it, the dumbing down is the terminology we would use, but essentially that's what's going on under the hood. All right, go on. Sorry. I just wanted to clarify.
Oh, no, you can, and once they did that, like I was upset. I mean, I haven't played Wreckfest since they did the console update to it, but I mean, at least I understand. Like, hey, we gotta make it for the consoles too. What I think they should have done is just like keep the PC game alone, and then take what you did from the PC game when you modified it for consoles and release it as a separate thing for consoles. Because I know, quite a few people are upset when they did that update, and I don't know if they fully recovered from that since then. I know Mark is saying it's gotten better, but I haven't really tried it since then.
It's gotten massively better from when it made the switch. It has gotten massively better, but I'd still argue I don't think it's as good as it was. There's just a certain playability that doesn't hit the same home run with me.
Yeah.
Now, I think in this case where you already had it on the PC, but now you kind of almost need two development teams to an extent, don't you? In order to have your console team and your PC team, you just doubled the price. We all know perfectly well that the PC sales are going to be dismal compared to the console. I mean, is that even... I mean, and I think that's unfortunately the kind of... Like, to me, if a company is a PC-only game, racing game in particular, those are people who are more dedicated to making a sim than money. I mean, because if you want to make money, you're an idiot if you're on the PC. You know,
Oh yeah.
Why make a can full when you can have buckets full, right?
Oh,
That's a good point. We're not the mainstream.
No. And you look at it. I mean, we could say like iRacing is the biggest sim that's out there, with their numbers, but I mean their numbers are still tiny compared to what Forza and Gran Turismo bring in on their consoles.
Right. Yeah, so it doesn't need 2 teams, but it is almost twice the work, I'm assuming, or a certain amount increased workload for that same one team. Yeah, and I think it's easy to confuse this topic with the other thing that's going on simultaneously, which I think also has some negative impact. That just being the early sale. I don't know what's the exact wording they're using, but like, what is the game that if you buy the super version, you get it 3 days early?
Like when you get preloads and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it used to be the Warhorse. I know they were giving you I think that was F1, because you got the Schumacher paint schemes and things like that, and you got bonus money to advance in the game at a higher level. Which, don't get me started. That's a whole other topic. Paying for level up.
Yep.
No. Tell me that's not just a buying your own participation trophy. You didn't play on the soccer team. You're just gonna go buy a trophy that says participation for soccer. Yep. It's not even a winning trophy, it's a participating trophy, and you didn't even get it authentically. You had to go buy it yourself. Anyway, collector's editions. Yeah, there are so many different variations, but what a lot of times they're using it. I mean, I remember with Red Dead Redemption, the original, it was the Warhorse, right? And I thought it was a really big deal, so I pre-ordered Red Dead Redemption so I could have the Warhorse. And in the end, it didn't matter at all. If you play World of Warships and you go pay for their content, the alien people laugh at you. Like, oh, well, you went and got paid content versus earn it content. Because the only way to do like a high level battleship is after leveling up to level 10 or whatever, right? Or you could buy a level 10 battleship. And so if you come in and you suck, it doesn't even matter if you suck. Everyone just points a finger at you because you're in a paid level 10 boat. Anyway, what about that kind of early access? I mean, does that aggravate you any differently? Early access, is that even a perk? Ooh, I get it 3 days early. Whoop-dee to do.
That kind of stuff doesn't bother me personally because that's very very much so like you say 3 days early, whoop-de-doo, an extra paint job, whoop-de-doo. I don't like the pay to win aspect. If there's an online mode, you can't have levels incorporated with that. But the stuff about paints and stuff is super super important because there are people like you were saying about the other games, but Dirt Rally was one that did that. And Dirt Rally 2 I anticipated for years. And then when they came out with it, they gave the early access, they gave some paint jobs, some extra cars, some stuff like that. And I'm all for that kind of thing because that's an extra $20. I throw that $20 out of my own volition. I'm not forced to. I don't have to. It's not early access, so I'm not paying just $20 for the game and getting a broken game. I'm getting pretty much a full game. Of course, there was some issues with Dirt Rally 2's release, but not nearly as much as there's been with other games. Right? They had VR issues and force feedback issues. Other than that, they were pretty solid as far as they went. And it was voluntary, and I paid that happily.
Yeah,
All right.
no, and I'm with Devin on that one too. I think when it comes to getting like the pre-order bonuses, that's just entirely up to the person, like what their commitment or dedication is to that brand. Like I don't tend to buy into them too much. Like there's certain games I will, like God of War. I went and bought the pre-orders just because God of War is one of my favorite titles. Same thing with the Batman Arkham series. But I don't do it for anything unless I'm invested into that certain aspect. And as long as it's either in-game skins or something you could, to enhance the experience in the game when you're playing single player, I'm all for it. Because again, all that money goes to the developer so they can come out with more content. My biggest issue is you brought up like World of Warships. If you pre-order and you get this level 10 warship or just any other game, that gives you a bigger advantage as somebody that doesn't pay for it. And when it comes to the competition style game, I can't stand those.
Well, it's not always a better boat, funny enough, but it gets you in a level of play. It would be like being able to buy an A license in iRacing. Right. If you bought the Cup car, it came with the A license. So then you go race in a race, and whether you suck or not, if you crash in that paid car, everyone's gonna be like, oh, well, he's the guy in the paid license car, right? I mean, that would go nutso in iRacing World. I thought we were 3-0 in.
Just under. Don't worry about it. You're supposed to read it. Just look.
There was controversy, so I had to address it.
Oh,
For those of
Devin.
you that don't know, behind the scenes,
right.
we have a timer.
I have a feeling that if we do this show for a year, this is a topic we're going to come back to, because I think that there'll be a title that comes out that just leaves everybody like, really?
There's one I wanted to touch on before we finished on this one. That's why I wanted to do that. Because Drift 21 released just the other day.
That's right.
And I paid for it. Just full disclosure, guys. We did talk about looking to get a review copy, but I specifically paid for it. I've been following this game for well over a year. They are one of those titles that said in November of 2019 that they would have a release, and then I believe they moved it, or September to November, something like that. And then as far as we knew, it got postponed indefinitely, and then they finally released it, and I guess there's like 3 cars and a track, but I can't even tell because it doesn't work with my wheelbase. So speaking of early access games done, as far as I'm concerned, terribly, they're going to need a lot to redeem my faith in their business model at the moment because of all the things that we've just talked about. And there are games still doing it as of 2 days ago.
Yeah, but by flipping the comparison though, SnowRunner, it doesn't work with my multiple controllers. I had to go dig a Thrustmaster out of the closet, put it on a different rig just to play, and then it still sucked as far as the wheel goes, as far as force feedback goes and enjoyment of the wheel play. So even at that point, I was like, I might just go to the controller. But I'm still playing because it was a blast.
Yep.
So even though it just sucks, I'm just going to say it, SnowRunner is a terrible wheel game. I mean, I could argue you're better off playing with a controller. If you're a streamer, you look stupid sitting there with a controller. But if I was playing and no one was watching, F the wheel. It's not worth it on that game. But despite that, they delivered such a home run on what they promised to me that I'm letting that slide and crossing my fingers that it gets cured or fixed or better. What about, how is that compared to Drift 21, I guess is what I'm getting at. I mean, they're in the same boat. They're both small developers.
I think the difference is that we've seen with SnowRunner what they can do. MudRunner and Spin Tires have proven themselves. So I think the difference is, like, for you've openly admitted, the game for wheel is not good, right? For you've openly admitted it. For me, my choice with that title was to back away from it. I know that they have potential. I know that they'll get to it. I've emailed them with my issues and what they need to do, as have everybody else. And they now know where to move forward, and we can trust that they're going to. Drift 21 is from a studio called 505 Games. Those are the guys that made Dead Stranding or Death Stranding, whatever it was, that huge game with all the real actors in it.
That's a big publishment house, 505.
Yeah. There's no excuse for this, as far as I'm concerned. They're a large company. They've got plenty of advertising. They've got plenty of backing. And again, it's been over a year since they started touting this as the one true and first drift simulator. And very specifically, drift simulator. Like, this is one of those ones, just like with ACC, this is a simulator, right? Simulation.
And that's fair, because like you said, one thing I take into consideration is pedigree. So when you bring up SnowRunner with Spin Tires and MudRunner, it's like, yeah, you know what? I don't mind that I have the game. And even if I don't play it, like, I think I've even said it publicly. It's like, well, as soon as they do a force feedback patch, I'm going to go back to it. I've had some fun. I got my money's worth already out of the title. And now when they improve it, I'll probably get a little more addicted and do a whole weekend kind of thing with it. Amir, how is that any different, what Devin just said, than buying a Soto Corsa Competizione on day one and not even turning it on for 3 months, waiting for them to get to a certain point, but knowing that I just bought it for 33% of retail. I mean, isn't that kind of the same thing?
I mean, yeah, in a way, I think it's kind of the same thing. But again, like we're talking about, we're looking at the pedigree. At least with Kunos, they had a set of Corsa under their belt when it came to knowing what the expectations are for ACC. With Drift 21, again, like they did all this advertisement, like yes, this is gonna be the the ultimate drift simulator, but they've never done Sims before. And then it comes out, and yeah, Devin can't even get it working on a direct drive. And if you're gonna call it a simulator, you have no excuse for it to not work on a direct drive wheel. Mudrunner, I'm okay with it because it's a game. They never said it was a simulator. I'm cool with it until they add it later on because it's what they did with Spin Tires and Mudrunner. But going back to ACC, so I knew what their potential was, and they were actively engaged with the community, letting them know here's the things that we're going to be doing as we move forward with the game. So to me, I was okay with the ACC, with Kunos doing that with ACC. Like I can buy the game, play it for a little bit, see what some of the issues are, and then once I start hearing word that things are getting better, yeah, I'll come back to it and start playing it again.
All right. Like I said, I think this is a topic that we're going to end up coming back to at another point in time because I don't think we're even close to the end. I don't even think we're close to the end of the shenanigans the industry is going to try to pull on us because if we keep being sheep's led to slaughter, then they're going to keep getting more and more out of us if they can. Because right now the trend is we're like, oh, that's great, here's my money. And maybe a complaint or two. Do you think that, last question, then we'll move on. Do you think that an early access has come back to bite anybody in the ass? Where they charged money regardless whether it was early access, but the title was so poor that negative videos, negative reputation prevented those who had it from ever going back and prevented some from even buying it. Do you think that's happened yet?
Not necessarily in sim racing. I'm not 100%. I haven't had this unless we're talking like there's a bunch of like $5 games. But anybody that's played Arma 2 and played DayZ will 100% attest to that. DayZ is terrible and only just got playable, as I understand it. And then like H1Z1, there's a plethora of like sandbox titles that came out and got like devastated in the way that they did their releases.
I think the VR world right now is doing that to themselves. There are so many really bad games coming out VR specific from small companies who, I'll tell you what, if I buy one and I only play it for an hour and never touch it again, I'll remember that developer name and you are going to have to convince me otherwise to buy something else from you in the future. So, I mean, I think there is an impact for me. I've seen it in my life in the VR side. I don't have any in the general gaming or racing scene yet. I don't buy that many general games, and I'm pretty selective about what I buy, so I've yet to be disappointed. There are some that I don't think are as good as others, sure, but I mean, in the VR world, there are some that I'm like, oh, you guys, ugh. And yet there are others that are doing completely the opposite. You know, like blowing my mind with their ability. It's like, wow, I forgot about, Valve, right? They made Alex. Isn't that Valve? Yeah. When was last? Do they still? I mean, the last I heard from them was Half-Life, like a decade ago. Are they? Yeah. Do they put out other titles, or is that their baby?
Just Half-Life and Team Fortress. I think those are like really their two titles. I mean, ever since they moved to Steam,
Okay, never mind. Then that they have a running title through this decade. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next topic. I'm not gonna point a finger at any series or anything that we might run in because I think it goes way beyond. I mean, if anybody saw like half the pro races that we're seeing, the was it the Bathurst race? I think it was. No, it wasn't Bathurst. Where was it? It was that pile-up of pile-ups. Anyway, my point here is, what is people's problems with owning their mistakes in racing? Let me give you a great example. If I'm at the supermarket and I'm walking down the aisle and I somehow don't see somebody and I bump into them, I'm very quick to apologize and own the mistake of me being so absent-minded that I bumped into you with no concern for your well-being. Yet in racing, if I'll use myself as an example, I make that same mistake and I nonchalantly bump into you and then somehow ignore the fact that it was my error in judgment, I might chalk it up to so many different things. Oh, let me roll out some excuses. It was you who came into me, not me into you, but let's go watch the replay. It was I missed my braking zone. It was my favorite, netcode. Oh, I love the blame of netcode on any and everything in sim racing. Why? Why do so many people? I'll give you another great. I think I do a fair, not great job of owning my responsibility. Last night, I thought I caused the mayhem that started the oval race by not getting up to speed quick enough, and I thought I had forced the low line to pass everybody underneath us and deliver black flags. Turns out that wasn't the case, but I was so convinced of it that I had apologized the entire group like 100 times over. Not watching, but why is it that across the board we just people have a really hard time owning their mistakes? And do you think I'm right? I mean, I'm shedding my opinion here, saying, hey, I think people just don't own their mistakes. They blame anything and everything but themselves when a moment happens. What is people's problem? What are people's problems?
Jump on it, Amir.
Oh, for me, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to explain why people don't own their mistakes. So I'll be the first one to admit, like, I've made my fair share of mistakes in racing, but at least I'm usually quick. I won't go ahead and start pointing the finger unless I know it's obviously somebody that did something that they weren't supposed to do. I'll go back to the replay. I'll watch it, see what happened. If it's my fault, I'll go back to the person I wronged and I'll apologize, saying, "Hey, man, I'm sorry, my bad." If it's within the Simpit that we race with, I'll go ahead and talk to them. And if it's an iRacing, I'll message the guy, send a personal message saying, "Hey, man, I'm sorry I ran into you." And I think it depends on what people are trying to get out of in sim racing. So if they're just trying to race and win from the first corner, those are the people who are just never going to learn from their mistakes. They just continue thinking that they're the greatest thing in the whole entire world because, hey, I made 5 passes in the first corner and survived or didn't survive. But then you got others that want to learn, want to get better. So those are the guys that go back, watch their replays from multiple different angles, and see what happens. So that way they know the next time it doesn't happen. Now, I think the easiest thing to do is blame it. It's the Forza and GT culture because people just race against the AI and they come into iRacing or ACC and like, I know I can win races in GT, but hey, I could do the same thing in iRacing, and it's not the case. I don't know if people just don't want to eat a slice of the humble pie. I don't know.
Devin?
Yeah, so I mean, I got lots to say on. I'll try to keep it short. I mean, first and foremost, there's a difference between people that outright don't own their mistakes, and there's a difference between people, and I quote Sean Cole here, saying that I'm seeing red. Because there are people, and I think myself, Amir, Sean, most of the bros in the pit crew at this point, I think, when we get angry, we will see red. And when we see red, we will say some things that we may or may not mean. And sometimes we do mean them, very much so. But a lot of the cussing and then the yelling that goes aside with the things that we mean aren't stuff we necessarily intend to come out. And a lot of the times, an accident will happen, and let's say you're running down the street and you're squeezing a guy on the outside, and maybe you squeezed that person 2 more inches than you thought you did and pushed them onto the grass, or maybe they turned into you and caused you to slide out, but somehow or another, the 2 cars make contact, the front one slides out. Immediately in that situation, if I'm the leading car, I'm going to be like, listen, screw you, you turned into me, regardless, because I see that line on my left, I know where I am, I left you room, right? And then after the race, I might go find out that maybe I did drift over a small amount, or maybe we drifted into each other a small amount. Maybe he had 2 feet of space, and we both drifted over 6 inches, in which case, really, neither of you are at fault in that case, but both of you are going to yell and scream like the other person was at fault when it happens. The important part to me, but my big thing, and I hope that people learn from conversations like this, and we have Facebook groups and posts that we do, we have other social media groups that we use to talk about these kind of things, is that when people hear and see that that is what the most cases are, people see in red saying some shit that they maybe don't mean, and then they come back and they're like, okay, well, let's talk about it now and figure out where we went wrong, how we can avoid it in the future, and that kind of thing. That's where it becomes important. People are going to make mistakes. They're going to yell about it. It's going to happen.
Have you guys gotten this email or message? I've gotten this multiple times in my racing career. There was an incident, me and somebody, and I get an earful from them in the chat room of the race. You know, you effer, you did this, you did that, blah blah. And then 5-10 minutes later, either a message, sometimes audio, sometimes a private message, sometimes it's even an email or a message in the forums later saying, "Oh, by the way, I watched the replay and it was totally my fault." Have you guys got that?
Absolutely.
Everyone, like, no, you guys are lucky. No, I haven't.
No? Everyone's ready to let you be the blame. You know, Amir, maybe you
What?
need to look in the mirror. I'm just
I mean,
saying.
well, well, so no, I mean, we can go back to it. I mean, you've apologized to me. I think what we did an oval race a couple of weeks ago, and we ended up hitting each other. And during the stream, we're like, Amir, that's your fault, and this is what you did. But then we went back and watched replay, and you came back later on and apologized to me. He's like, yeah, I mean, it was something that happened behind me. There wasn't anything I could have done, or I could have done something better. So. And I think that's where I think where I try not to say anything on radio. Like, I'll be heated behind my steering wheel. I'll be throwing a curse storm, but at least I'll try to wait till after the race to say something after I've seen what happened in the replays.
Can you ever blame someone else 100% for the mistake, even? I mean, one of my theories of
Oh, yeah.
racing is that you are supposed to have a certain amount of heads up of your own, and you're supposed to sense problems. You're supposed to look for ways out. You're supposed to know what you would do if such and such happened. And I mean, again, is that other person ever 100% at fault? Unless it was deliberate?
So there's a race that's going to go up onto the Simpit channel, and I'm going to preface this, you guys, because there's names on the relatives. So when you see this race goes up, I don't want you to think of this conversation and post in the comments being an asshole to the person. The person that was involved came and talked with us on stream afterwards, so I just want to clarify that. Lessons were learned after this. But we had a race 2 days ago in the Mazdas. I passed a car for first position. I believe it was second last lap. On the main straight at Lime Rock, I think I had about 8 feet on my left-hand side, and I made sure I left that 8 feet and was very clear about it. And this is kind of going back to the example where you might have thought it was your fault, but not, kind of thing. But I definitely had enough space. When we looked at the replay, there was about a car width and a half on the outside, and the car, instead of trying to pass me on the outside, legitimately pit me. Like, actually turned into the rear end and full on pit me on the start-finish line. And that person was mad and thought it was my fault, and then we went back and we looked at it and we objectively figured it out. So there are times when it honestly isn't your fault. There's honestly are times where you can't do anything, but it's still important in those cases where, like, yeah, I got mad and yeah, I said some things initially, but even with it not being my fault, I still, in the end, stepped it back and talked to that person. Was like, well, this is where you went wrong, right? Like, we can clearly see where you went wrong. I can see why you would have thought it was my fault if you're on a single monitor, or if you're just not used to knowing exactly where your car's placement. It's rookie Mazdas. Some people just don't know, right? And the person was roughly 2 feet off the left-hand side of the track, and pulled off to the right, and hit the back bumper of my car and spun me around. And they thought that I had gone to the left a little bit, when in fact they were drifting to the right and just didn't realize it. So there are times when it's not going to be your fault, but most of the time you can find something you could have done. When there's an accident with like 10 cars in front of you and one comes sliding across the track to hit you, you probably could have slowed down, right? Like, there are things you can do.
Sure.
I think it's the thing, though. Like, people when they look at professional racing and see there's not that many incidents going on, and try to say, the quality of racing in iRacing or ACC or whatever sim is horrible. A thing I don't think a lot of people talk about or realize is a lot of these racers are in the professional series have raced each other for a long time too, so they know what that person's going to do.
Right.
They race behind them for a couple laps. They don't go ahead and immediately try to pass them. They try to learn their patterns and make the pass stick when they go around, because again, they have to watch. They got a multi-million-dollar car that they have to watch out for too. when it comes to iRacing, people just don't know who they're racing against each other unless you're in a league and you've known those people. And again, there's no consequences if you do crash. Like, you don't have to pay thousands or hundreds, millions of dollars to fix a car that you just broke.
All right, you just hit reset.
Yep.
I think what you said there about knowing the drivers is a big deal, because when I'm talking about protecting myself, I don't handle all drivers the same ways at the same moments. And there are guys who I will get very close to in oval racing, for example, like, and trust that they are going to hold their line. And there are other people that I'll be damned if I'm going to go too wide into a corner with. There are certain guys who, if they're in my mirror, I fear more than others. Whether I think they can pass me or not is secondary to whether I'm afraid. It's like, uh-oh, so-and-so's in my mirror, look out. I think when you race against people you know who the drivers who know when you're faster than them and behind and will give way, versus the ones who, regardless of pace, will never give up position. Dave Blair. I didn't mean to name any names. Did I do that? Did I do that?
I wasn't going to mention his name at all. No.
So yeah, I think knowing your opponent is a big part of some of that. I don't think it changes the blame game, and I don't think it changes the trash talk when you think you've been wronged, if you know them or don't. I think that seems pretty common across the board. All right, we're running a little late on time. I do want to move into one thing, and I don't want to take a long time with it, because I feel it's a topic that's been maybe perhaps beaten to death already over the last few weeks. I'm going to say it. iRacing is my favorite sim. Some of it is the quality of the simulation itself. A good majority of it is the service that they provide. That's me. A lot of pro racers, and we've seen, whether you talk about Austin Oganowski, I've seen at least 3 videos where people have taken the exact same clips, by the way, so they're carbon copy videos, of, Nikki Thiem and Newgarden and all the people talking smack about iRacing handling like a Mazda, blah, blah. We could play the clips because they're the same ones that have been all over the place. I think if they were vinyl, they'd be worn out. So iRacing is sort of getting a bum rap. A lot of people pointing fingers at their handling model, the way iRacing drives. My question to you guys, I think both of you are kind of iRacer dominant, but maybe not iRacer total. Is their assessment fair? And what sim does that part in particular better than iRacing? Ice racing. I think I'll use that as a general, and that's not new. The people have been using it in this last month. That is not new. This is a 10-year-old label given to iRacing by most of its own community. So this is not even a slam. The people who love iRacing, the first ones to call it iRacing. So let's be fair. But what do you guys think? Devin, you go.
Oh, okay. No, for me, like I'm on the kind of all around boat. I know you're all iRacing. Amir, I think we'll probably end up getting into R Factor, so I'll leave that alone. My thing is, like, I'm more. Every sim has their issues, and every sim has their pros, right? When I play ACC, I can see that I can feel that the tire model is good. I can feel the force feedback is good. The braking is outstanding, but it runs terribly. It's got poor optimization, and when you spin the cars past a certain amount, they do some weird things with the physics. But for the most part, they're really great. Again, just quickly touching on it, R Factor 2 as the tire model, Project Cars 2 even as a title that anybody who's been around with the crew for a while knows from Project Cars Tuesdays last year. I hate that game with a fiery passion, but I'll still play it because it's got a great car selection, it's got a great track selection, and you can do things in it you can't do in a lot of other titles. Assetto Corsa has the old slot pin car thing with the center of it, right? The big thing is that every sim has their issues, every sim has their pros and cons, and people forget that perception is a part of it. Like Sean said with the videos, I won't go super deep into it, but I've had one example that I've been using kind of fairly often with this last little this talk about the tire model in iRacing. And there's 2 specific pieces of content. One with Nikki Thiem, He's driving a TCR, and he's freaking out, screaming, cussing, yelling, just outright bashing on the tire model. But the person that owns the TCR, the one that iRacing scanned, as far as I understand it, now this is all on the forums, so I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly trusting of the iRacing forums when people are talking and verified. So as I understand it, the person that owns the TCR had their car scanned. It's set up for Laguna Seca, and they recorded a video in that TCR at Laguna Seca, in sim and out of sim, and the car drove almost exactly the same. It was phenomenal to watch. You know, the inputs were the same. It looked the same on track. It bounced relatively the same. It looked phenomenal. So very different perceptions can give you a very different opinion on how the sim feels, and it's important to note that. I like the Mazda tire model. People hate the Mazda tire model because you're driving on glass for the first 2 laps. You know, so it's really perspective is the biggest thing. I think that's important that we remember that.
What do you think, Amir?
Yeah, I mean, because I want, like, this is a topic I want to bring up because I've seen all these videos about people trashing iRacing as of late, and I mean they're probably, and some of them are probably justified in the way they do it, but I wanted to bring up because each sim has their own issues. Like, I don't think iRacing is better than ACC, or our race room is better than R Factor. I think each one brings its own thing to the table, and all we hear about now is just all the negativity about iRacing because that's just what the majority of people are playing. So of course you're gonna have a bigger vocal community talking about it. Because I've seen the videos from Austin Agonosky, I've seen the clips from Nikki Team, and I kind of pushed them aside. I didn't really put too much thought into it, but then I watched a couple of YouTube videos from Niels Huskenfeld, the guy behind the Huskenfeld pedals and stuff, where he took a more objective take on what's going on and why things are the way they are. He made 2 videos about, one, if you don't like iRacing, don't quit sim racing. Great video where he talks about that. And then he made another video where he talks about how hard it is to get tire data into a simulation. So, and again, like RG, I was going to bring that up. RG brought up in the chat. It's a human representation. Simulators are human representations of what info we think should be, what's in the real world, and how we take it into into simulations. So, like, the biggest thing is tire model. So I mean, tire is not an easy thing to take from a sim because you got to worry about tire pressures, inertia, the bounce of the tires, the flexibility. There's so much data, and we don't know how much access iRacing has to this information. Usually, race car tire manufacturers are pretty secretive about all those data. So they'll give them a little bit here and there, and then iRacing or Race Room or R Factor, they have to take that whatever data they find and then put it into the sim, which can either go really good or could go really bad. For me, like, I've been with iRacing for 3 years now, but I've seen constant improvement with the tires. I mean, beforehand, when I first started iRacing, you do 1 lap, the tires are warmed up, and you can pull in your fastest lap ever. But now you have to warm the tires up. Yes, they're a little slippery, but at least you can get them a point where they can feel nice as the race continues on. My biggest problem with iRacing is is you can't drive the cars on the limit. The minute you drive the cars on the limit is the minute you lose it, and that's weird. I don't think if the car's on the limit, that should be the best drive you have in your car, not trying to save it from a slide or going off track and stuff.
Yeah. I think what you just said there is super duper important and relevant. In real life, finding that line where you're on the edge in the car is an easy line to find. You know, if you're looking for it and you're under grip versus not enough grip, it's very easy to find when you're right on that right line. And when you're really dialed in a real car, it's very easy to walk the line. And at times, and anybody, especially on a front engine rear wheel car, for example, where you could literally just sort of wiggle. I was doing that in the NASCAR coming off corners last night, wiggling the rear end, crossing the line, bringing it back in, crossing the line, bringing it back in. I agree. I think it's very hard to find that in sim. I was doing it last night, but it's hard in general. Here's the other thing, and yeah, what Billy said is something that I really do critique every sim for. If you call yourself the best sim, you have to back it up. You're just leaving you can just say we are a great sim, but you use words like best, and that comes with certain obligations as well. With great power comes great responsibility. I also feel that speed sensitivity is something that we still struggle with, whether you're a veteran sim racer or new to it. Understanding and I think a lot of these real life racers don't realize that they're actually pushing the car so much harder than they ever would in real life, and then expecting a different result. And it's like, well, in real life you would have found, your brain would have instantly told you you're over the edge, and you would have backed down the next time around. And then here's the last thing I'm going to say to this, and I say this more commonly nowadays, and I can even get more in depth of it. This is just simulation. It isn't an IndyCar. It isn't a Miata. It's a simulation. It might as well, you think you're in a Miata, it might as well be a Corvette. It's no closer a model. It's just a unique car built for simulation. But here's the one thing I will say. Real life or sim, more so in real life. If I go to a track in real life on a Tuesday morning and it's foggy and cold and no one's been there for 14 days, the track is going to handle so much differently than if I'm there on a Sunday after a Friday practice, Saturday racing, and Sunday racing, and it's all built up. Those are two entirely different tracks. Like, you wouldn't even be able to compare the kart and the way it handled and the track the way it drove. They would be so different under those two conditions that even the same thing in reality isn't the same thing or even close. I mean, in some cases it's more close, but I'm thinking back to karting days when I'd go to a track that nobody had been to in a while. It had a layer of dust. My kart might be near impossible to drive. And yet at the end of a weekend when the rubber's there, the track might be so sticky you can't make a mistake. Same track, same kart, same tires, same setup, same everything. And I'm thinking that might be something that some people aren't recognizing also, is that the slight changes mean that it isn't the same. You need to adapt. If you think the car is oversteery, give it less throttle, not complain that it's oversteery. And then, but again, that comes back to when your expectations, your presumptions are, hey, they gave me an Indy car, this should handle like an Indy car. And I do agree with that, by the way. I don't think it's a good thing when an Indy car driver, whether it's a sim or not, gets out and says it handles like a Miata. That is not good, because nobody has a better understanding of the type of rotation that car should have. So, yes, I think that at the same time, he should be a better driver. Underdrive it, play to what you've got, use the tools that you were given. But that doesn't speak well or bode well for the sim when an IndyCar, you know, because it's like, wow, that lack of downforce like that as a complaint for a open-wheeled car is somewhat inexcusable, really. I mean, there is no setup where you can take so much wing out of an IndyCar that a driver should be able to make such a comment. You know, you'd have to literally not have the wing.
Brandon makes a good point on that note. They are games. I know you guys hate it when we call the Sims games, but
I don't.
Every sim is a game.
I don't.
Exactly what it is. Yeah. Not you guys, but like, you know, just in general, a lot of people.
For years I did. I remember when iRacing came out, if you use the word game to describe iRacing, they would be horribly offended. Oh, yeah. Now they went away from that like rub you wrong kind of feeling. I agree with you there, Billy. I agree. I think in real life that their cold tire model at this point it's like, okay, a cold tire in iRacing right now might as well be made of cement. You know, throw out the rubber. There is no rubber involved in a cold tire in iRacing right now. It is made of some other compound, because rubber doesn't have a compound that hard. It would no longer be rubber. It would be called plastic at that point. I agree with you 100%, Billy. Now I will say, I think I prefer a tire that is that extremely worthless cold. Well, now at race starts is really inexcusable, but I really hated the old version where if you wanted to do a hot qualifying lap, you had to go around Spa at 28 miles an hour.
Oh, I hated that.
You know, and then right when you get to that final corner, you punch it, because your tires were never better than when they were ice cold. And at Spa being long enough, even 3/4 of the way through your lap, you probably already exceeded their maximum stick. So I really despise that old tire model. But I agree, the new one, it's just, it's not even good for drift, because I think in
No.
drift you need better front end traction. It goes into a four-wheel worthless slide. Again, ice racing. You go into in iRacing, you feel like you hit black ice, and you've just lost traction at any point of any tire on the entire vehicle. And it is a desperate, horrible feeling as a racer. It's the worst thing you could ever want out of a car, and you would endlessly go. If you were driving that car in real life, any car for the most part in iRacing, on their tire model, you would pull back into your pits after a couple laps and say, "Look, this thing's gonna kill me." Yeah. So fix this car while I'm still alive, please. And I'm not even joking. I mean, in real life, the cars are yeah, they would be killing people. All right. Any other thoughts? We're over time, or we're getting there. Any other thoughts on this, you guys? I mean, what sim? What do you do? Why are we still in iRacing then?
So, I mean, for me, like iRacing, it's the competition. It's
Yep.
the only game that's out there that offers that depth and in detail level of competition system. I know ACC is trying to build theirs up. Race Room just started doing their dedicated servers. R Factor is going to launch their competition system, 2030? I don't know when. But that's what keeps people in iRacing, is the level of the competition and multiplayer that's available in it. And until any other sim can start competing with that, iRacing is always going to be the de facto leader until then, regardless if it's the best sim or not.
You guys think that if R Factor had massive servers at the ready, if they had bundled all their content together and made the user interface super duper easy to use, do you think iRacing would have a chance in hell against them?
No chance. 100%.
R Factor's force feedback is that good. All physics aside, even just the force feedback. I've been messaging iRacing recently, and if anybody else wants to, hint, hint, hop on the forums and do so. I think that's where they're losing out. I just as a side note, jumping up to DD, and I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion with people that don't use DD, but jumping up to it, I can drive the cars better. I'm catching them faster, and I directly attribute that to better FFB.
Right. Brandon just brought up the greatest point. Devin, you and I need to talk in the next couple days. It's not going to be Sim Pizza. I thought about it. Sim Pizza was a terrible name. It didn't make the point. But I think it's Frankensim. I think that's what we're really building, is Frankensim, because we're going to be pulling parts from various different sims to build the ultimate sim. And we are going to start working on that immediately. And with this show, I think today's topic is a perfect lead-in to Sim Soup. No, Frankensim. We are the doctor. Anyway, we need to go because 8 minutes ago the practice room opened up for the Discord for the patron appreciation race. So I do have to kind of force a quick closure on this show here today. Any last thoughts before we do bring it to an end?
Yeah, just the last thing is, we're talking about this topic. If you don't like iRacing, don't get discouraged by sim racing. Go out there, try all the other sims that are out there. R Factor, Assetto Corsa, ACC. Each one brings a different perspective of what you probably didn't like in iRacing, and the other sims do have. So yeah, don't just hate iRacing. Go out there, try the other sims, give them a chance, and you might end up liking sim racing a lot more.
Tim Tumpster. That's why we talk Frankensim. Exactly what you just said right there. Devin, any thoughts from you?
No, I think we covered it pretty good, to be honest. I think we got it all out. It's just the big thing to remember for me, and that I would leave everybody with, is perspective. That would be the big thing. Is perspective is a lot of it, and there are real drivers arguing just as strongly for iRacing as they are against it, just like there are in every other sim. Perspective in all sims have their pros and cons.
Sim Smorgasbord.
There you go. That's good.
Sim Buffet.
You say that like you say wench.
Awesome. You guys, thanks for joining. I love this. I'm sure that some of these topics today and from last week are things we're going to talk about over and over again in different ways, maybe different angles, but they are the things that certainly cause passion and great conversation. So thank you for that, you guys. You guys gonna make the race? You gonna make the race? Patron race coming up?
We'll
Gonna
find
try
out.
to.
I gotta check on the kids. I'm gonna try.
Same here.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for this one. Amir, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Any big plans this weekend?
No. Get used to the new wheel that I just got. I think it's like right behind me, the GT wheel. I just got it last week. So first time I tried it was for the NASCAR race last night. So try to get some more time with
Both,
it. And
both of you on new wheels.
yeah, so hopefully come out with a video for it here pretty soon.
Devin,
me
any big
Devin.
plans for you?
Words are glorious. The Drift 21. If anybody wants to come check it out, I'll be streaming that tonight on Twitch. So if Sean's not when Sean's finished up, if you guys want to come hang out, that's where I'll be.
There you go.
I'll be doing
There you
Snow
go.
Runner.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, you guys, thanks again. Everybody out there, thanks for being here. Great. Thanks for your great conversation as well. And if you ever have topics that you think we should talk about here on 3Y, definitely email me, Sean, SHAUN, at thesimpit.com, and I'll add them to our list so we can talk to them about them in the future. Words are tough, huh, Devin? Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you, Amir. Thank you, Devin. Have a great weekend, everybody. This is the Simpit. I'm sure we are 3 wide, and we'll see you on the track.
Slavities bros, thanks again.